I think he was a really talented musician.
He was a talented magician?
Yeah, I think I think he probably had a twin.
He had a twin, a doppelganger. Kind of like Trump has a twin? A double.
Where in the Bible does it say you have to go to college campuses, argue with people just for views? That doesn't seem very like you're giving anything to anyone. Like you were just talking about feeding the homeless and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
what about running a YouTube channel where you just yap all day as part of like helping people out?
I don't get a dime from standing out here speaking. I'm a pastor of a church in Connecticut, and they pay me a salary. Okay? Second point is... why is work valuable to you? Why is work important?
It's how you like show kindness. It's how you show value.
What is the basis of kindness and value if there is no God?
You're the same as the schizo guy that wanders around with his little dog out here. I don't know if you've seen him.
No, I haven't seen him. All right, so I'm getting the drift that you don't really appreciate me standing out here and speaking. May I remind you that we are in a culture where universities are that believe in a liberal arts education, where we believe in the free exchange of ideas, even when we disagree. We live in a culture that teaches tolerance, which means you and I might disagree, but we're not going to be disrespectful to each other. We're going to respectfully disagree. And that's why I appreciate you disagreeing with me and calling me out. So no problem, okay? But you're coming on as if you're a thinker. Great, I hope you are a thinker. You think, and you're criticizing me and analyzing me. It's fine, no problem. No problem at all. Now, with your critical mind, do you think God exists or not?
No.
Why?
I mean, it's beside the point, though, whether God exists or not. I mean,
Really?
the main thing is that you try to actually work towards improving society, improving the world around you, and I don't really see people like yourself doing that.
Oh,
You're
really?
trying to distract people from the real problems in society and bring them back towards theology, which has done nothing, right, to like advance the struggles of humanity in the last like 100 years, but like keep people pinned down, right? Like in countries like Mexico, right? I travel a lot, so I have family there. The church is the biggest obstacle to people standing up for themselves against oppression.
Really?
It is one of the main pillars of oppression in that society. I know a lot of you guys don't agree with me, but right, because the church is constantly saying, obey authority, just accept the way things are, pray that things will get better, and don't actually struggle against what is keeping you down. Don't actually struggle against the people that are coming and taking all the resources out of your land, that are paying you miserable wages. Just have a good work ethic, right? Have good values, pray, and accept the way things are. And so, yeah, you know, I don't think that you're actually, right, like doing anything to improve, you know, the lot of downtrodden and toiling people. And you're just putting up smoke and mirrors to distract people.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the demographic with the most atheists in the world?
Probably the wealthy countries, yeah.
Oh my goodness, isn't that interesting? The demographic with the most atheists is wealthy white guys. What's the demographic in the United States that has the highest percentage of followers of Christ? African American women. So what I hear you saying, sir, is all them dumb twits just don't get it. They just submit to this Jesus and blindly pray to him instead of getting off their backsides and doing something. Sir, you're out of touch with reality. Totally out of touch with reality. African American women in the United States understand there is nobody who stands for the value of woman more than Jesus Christ. Because the Bible teaches we're all created in the image of God. And just because you got some twit anthropology professor who tells you, oh yeah, it's all colonialism, that's why Africans believe in Jesus. That's racist. It's totally racist. It's a joke. The demographic with the highest percentage of followers of Christ in the world is women of color. So when you attack Christianity, make sure you know who you're attacking. And for you to stereotype Christians as wealthy people who want to oppress people is a farce. Yes, unfortunately, that's occurred. We all know that. That's sick.
Know the truth today.
No, it is not. The majority of women of color in the world today who follow Jesus Christ have very little political power, economic power. Instead, they understand that we all are created in the image of God. We all have equal value and dignity. Now, why do you think woman is valuable?
Because they're one of the pillars of society. I mean, they're 50% of the population. They, right, they're those who provide life, right?
Yeah.
For the most part, they've been confined by society to, right, upbringing children and stuff like that. But I mean, why do I think women are valuable? Why do you think anyone is valuable?
Because human beings are not accidents. We're created by God for a purpose. And the African American and the women of color that I know who put their faith in Christ are taking care of the downtrodden. They are feeding unwanted babies. They are taking care of physically and mentally challenged people. They are loving people. It's boots on the ground love. It's not some theoretical, let's be idealists. Let's be intellectuals who decry a certain form of injustice. No, they're getting involved. They're putting their bodies on the line and serving people. That's what real love is. It's not sitting in some intellectual ivory tower and giving platitudes on, oh, well, you know what the Catholic Church has done, the Crusades, the Inquisition. Jesus Christ is a loser. No, the church at times has been a loser. And you're right. The church has done some horrible things that tells you nothing about Jesus Christ. And that's why my African American sisters in the United States are so open-minded and brilliant, because they don't allow a white racist to turn them off to the true Jesus who didn't have a racist bone in his body.
Well, I mean, I'd say, right, if someone goes and takes a bunch of people and puts them to work for miserable wages or whatnot, that's wrong.
From your perspective. Now, where do you get off being so arrogant that you think your perspective is right? Do I think I define right and wrong in any absolute sense? I'm culturally biased. I got my own prejudices. But if there is a God who's created all human beings for a purpose and given all of us innate value, then injustice is really wrong, because there's a value of justice that is violated. But it's a real value of justice. It's not a value of justice that is defined by the intellectual elite on some elitist university campuses in the United States. Excuse me, don't mean to pop into your bubbles, but if you believe that kind of rubbish, you're in trouble. Justice is not defined by UC Davis or Harvard or Stanford, even Stanford. It ain't defined by Stanford, okay? It's defined by the eternal mind, God, who is just and good, and who really loves you, and who loves all of us, and who wants to live in relationship with us. That's the basis of justice, not some arrogant intellectual ivory tower people.
You can't even, describe, you just say God, God's eternal love.
There's a mind, an eternal mind, that exists before your mind and before my mind. And it's that mind that has defined goodness and justice throughout eternity. But if there is no God, you know who defines right and wrong. The human mind, which means, buddy, it's all relative, depending on which human mind you're talking to. You can't live that out. You can't live moral relativism out. You can't tell me today it's wrong for me to murder, but maybe tomorrow it's good for me to murder. It's all relative.
Was Luigi Mangione right to kill that healthcare CEO?
Well, what do you think?
Yes. That guy was a parasite that actually hurt people, that actually did wrong.
Have you ever hurt anybody? Have you ever hurt anybody?
Emotionally, maybe,
Oh, maybe? You know very well that I've hurt people and you've hurt people. And let's not act like some self-righteous twits. We both have done wrong. I'm a dirty, rotten sinner. And guess what? Hate to break it to you, so are you. To act like, I'm superior, I'm really good, and I hope all you nitwits will get your act together and be good like me. That is self-righteous arrogance. And that is what Jesus attacked most personally in the form of the Pharisees. No, at times I do good, at times you do good. At times I do evil, at times you do evil. We're mixed up kids. And Jesus comes to mixed up kids like you and me and says, come to me, I want to give you my grace, my love, I want to change you from the inside out. You've got to be able to deal with sin. Why? Because of Ukraine. Why? Because of Hamas and Hezbollah and Israel. Why? Because of divorce and racism, sexism, chauvinism, abused children, because of date rape, even at UC Davis of all places. And if you can't diagnose the problem accurately, if you think it's simply of, your lack of education, your lack of money, your lack of a good environment, if you think that's the problem, you are naive. Jesus Christ says no. The problem is right in your heart, right at the center of your being. And that's why I'm convinced that although education is good, and although money is good, and although a good environment is good, it's not going to address the basic human problem, a twisted heart, twisted motives. And that's why Christ bled and died on a cross, to pay the penalty for our sin, to forgive us, and to give us eternal life.
My theory is he probably lied, but it was made in good faith. And I think it was one of the greatest lies ever told. But he did it for God. And, he's probably in heaven now because of that. But I don't think he was physically, in a sense, the divine son of God. I think he was a really talented musician.
He was a talented magician?
Yeah, I think he probably had a twin.
He had a twin, a doppelganger. Kind of like Trump has a twin? A double. Those are all fascinating ideas. Maybe he slept with his mother, Mary. I mean, many people believe that. What is the evidence there, though? Because if you're just going to say, why can't we just detach him from God, and let's just say he was a good moral teacher, well, then you're going to have to drop all the evidence around his claims to be God. And why did so many people buy into, after his resurrection especially, thousands of Jews all of a sudden start believing that he was God? I mean, it's just like Bono of U2 talked about. Liar, lunatic, legend, or Lord. And all the evidence stacks up to, in my mind, he's Lord based off of how, Stuart? Just because your Sunday school teacher when you were 3 taught you that? No, I hope hopefully more than that. I think based off of the 8 sources we have, much of that spanning right to the Gospels, and then also sources outside of what we have of those different books and historical documents in the Bible, whether it's from Josephus, Celsus, Tacitus, art, archaeology, all talking about his claims to be God. So you could say that he wasn't God, but it's hard to just say that he was just a magician, that he had a twin, that he slept with his mother somehow. Well, I mean, I think that theory is there's more evidence behind that theory than one where he had a twin. I've never even heard before that he had a twin.
Well, there's more evidence for that than if he was the son of God. I've never seen anyone get resurrected. Why should I believe that it happened 2,000 years ago? That's not putting your faith in God. That's putting your faith in the passage of human knowledge. And I do not trust that whatsoever.
Excellent. I totally agree. But if there is a God, then I would think it's rather easy for him to pause what we view as the natural law and raise his son from the dead. I think that would be very easy, actually. And so in light of the fact that 400 million people in Asia alone claim to have experienced miracles in the supernatural, I don't think it's a ridiculous leap to say that the supernatural occurred 2,000 years ago with the resurrection. All right, Stuart, but what in the world is the evidence then? All right. 1, every scholar across the nation would say that Jesus existed, right? Pretty much. 2, vast majority, about 98%, said that he died on a cross. All right, we can go there. Thirdly, the majority believe that he was buried in a well-known tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, who gave up his reputation. He was high up in the Sanhedrin, as well as Nicodemus. Something about them, they were willing to turn it all over just to bury Jesus. Fourthly, women were the first to the tomb. They would have been completely discounted their testimony in a court of law. And so why would the disciples not have changed that to make this seem more like, hey, it really happened? Let's say men were the first to the tomb who discovered him. Fifthly, the disciples, every scholar agrees, for the most part, say that these disciples had some type of crazy interaction with who they thought was the risen Christ. You could say it was actually Jesus, or you could say they all hallucinated, they were all on DMT trips or mushrooms of some sort, and they had this crazy hallucination. You know, that sometimes happens when you suffer and you have these dreams and revelations when you're suffering. Could be. But then all of a sudden you had even more encounter and these radical life changes. So that's number 6. Radical life change. All of a sudden, his half-brother James, who again, huge leader in the early Sanhedrin, gives up his life when his whole life he was calling his brother crazy, a lunatic for claiming to be God. But now all of a sudden is willing to die for this claim? What about Peter? All of a sudden went from denying Jesus to a 4-year-old schoolgirl to all of a sudden be willing to die upside down on a cross? Endless amounts. And then lastly, what in the world? How do you have overnight thousands of Jews becoming Christians? They would have had way more hoops to jump through to believe in something like the resurrection than us in our scientific day and age. I'm dead serious. We in our scientific age say, oh no way that could happen. They would have expected a general revelation at the end of time and they never would have expected this suffering servant. They would say, no, a political, powerful leader would come and upend the Roman Empire. So if you don't believe the resurrection occurred, or you don't believe that Jesus claimed to be God, or you don't believe in the Christian movement at all, I just would need to hear historical evidence for a better conclusion.
Well, I don't think this debate is very important. I think we could go in circles round and round, and we'd never come to a concrete answer.
Well, no, what is the historical evidence, though?
Well, okay,
That it didn't
I can't
happen.
give you any. You can't give me any that it did happen. Any
I just gave you
physical.
I just gave you 10 lines.
No. But witness testimonies.
Uh-huh.
That's not pure evidence, like archaeological evidence. I would need to see some sort of that. I can't really give you the best answer. What I'm really wondering is why it's important for me to believe that rather than to believe that the miracle of God, that God is.
All right, do you know that eyewitness testimony is still the number one line of hardest pieces of evidence in the court of law? I always thought it was DNA evidence. Eyewitness testimony is higher. So we have the best form of evidence, even today, back then, to Jesus having existed, his claims, and actually having been raised from the dead. So don't ever let anybody come to you and say, oh, it's just eyewitness testimony. No, that's the number one line of evidence, even today in the court of law. It's pretty cool that God gave us the number one line of evidence.
It could have been a bunch of people in a circle and they all agreed to tell the same lie. And,
Yep.
Still in good faith, it was still for a good reason, but it doesn't make it true, and it doesn't have to be true in order for you to believe, I think.
Okay? They would have given up land, property, finances, reputation, ultimately their lives to believe this. So if you're going to go with that line of thinking, you're going to have to say, then they would have died for what they knew to be a lie. Nobody dies, any psychologist will tell you that, for what they know to be a lie. They'll die for some great ideology, but they're never going to die for what they know to be a lie. And so why, just overnight, would thousands of people and hundreds of eyewitnesses just say, hey, let's all get together and make up this fanciful story where we're going to give up all of our land, property, all of our relatives, and our very lives just for the sake of this great story?
I think you'd agree that it's the most convincing idea of after death. It's if we don't have a justification, if there's no punishment for doing evil, doing sin, then I can do whatever I want. And because I believe that there is moral truth out there, I would fight for that.
Okay, but I don't believe that you truly believe that the Christian ideal of heaven and what Christ called us to is the most tantalizing, something that you want to just give your life up for randomly. No, he said you have to hate your father and mother to be my disciple. He said, let the dead bury their own dead. He said, it's tremendously offensive. You are a dirty, rotten sinner, so much so that I had to die on the cross for you. There's nothing about that to me. Maybe for you, if you're masochistic, I am not a masochist. There is nothing about that that jives with my pride. My pride says, no. Hate my father and mother in terms of paling in comparison and worshiping you. Worshiping you? No. Giving up my life to serve you? No, you calling me a rotten sinner? No, nothing about that. I don't want to die for that. And so it wasn't just some great ploy or hoax where, hey, let's get all people together. We're going to believe in judgment, sin, these offensive narratives that Jesus is pushing, but let's just say they're okay. And let's just all die for it. There's no historical evidence behind that for having happened. Secondly, I don't think it's tantalizing or attractive. I think eternal life is, but a lot of what Christ taught, there's a reason why so many followers even were taken off. But look at John chapter 6. Look at his ascension. How many people doubted and then said, whoa, too much. That's too radical for me. I'm taking off.
I think he had a very good way of articulating it that was enough in order to convince those men to do those things.
Okay, but if you're going to say he didn't resurrect from the dead, he is not the way, the truth, and the life. You're leaving out the main part of the whole story. So you have to say, moral teacher, but he was also a lunatic. He was a schizophrenic, unmedicated. So I mean, you can't just say he is the way, the truth, and life, but oh, by the way, the miraculous didn't happen, and the resurrection definitely didn't happen. No, he was claiming this his entire life. So you can't call him the way, the truth, and the life, and then say, oh, well, the 90% of the stuff that he was saying about the resurrection and I am the way, the truth, and the life shown through the resurrection, that didn't happen, and somehow he's still, though, the truth, the way, the truth, and the life. You have to discount it completely. See, everybody back then came to Christ either and worshipped him, wanted to kill him, or ran from him. Never did anybody come neutrally and just say, oh, you're the truth, and that's kind of chill, and that's my truth, it's my subjective truth. No, he made too many drastic, intense claims to have left it there.
I think it's possible that someone could give up their life in order to do the right thing. I mean, look at all the good that Christianity has brought us in the last 2,000 years.
Yes.
You know, it has also brought some bad for extreme cases like the Crusades and whatnot. But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's been very good. Do we have to believe that that miracle happened in order to believe in the way? Or can we not just say, I believe in this is the right thing?
Well, if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, then you could say that there's objective truth. But if Jesus is not the Son of God, and he did not show that through his resurrection, and if there is no God, then you can't make this truth claim. You can say, in your point of view, this is cool, this is great, but there's no objective truth out there. And so for you, it's so disingenuous for me to just say, hey, what's your favorite hobby? Drawing, all right. Okay, if I say, you don't really like to draw, I mean, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just gonna take this side of you, this Jasper, and leave out your greatest loves and desires and what you stand for. Well, that's what you're doing with Jesus Christ. You're saying, Jesus, you're pretty cool. You give some cool truth. You know, you're the one who made kindness cool in the Roman Empire. Nobody ever thought of kindness or love in the Roman Empire. But you know what? Your claims over here, the resurrection, and this big part of you, claim to be God and you are God. Let's just chill on that. That's a little too intense for me. That's a little too radical. Do you see how offensive that is and how impossible it is to do that to a person? Because so much of your very makeup, you say you love your family the most more than anything. Well, first of all, that's very fragile to turn them into God. But then secondly, it's very disingenuous if I were to say, hey, Jasper, I don't really care about that side of you. Your family doesn't really matter. I'm just going to take this side of Jasper.
Yeah, you could argue, you could talk to God, and God is Jesus, but, you know, we're going to disagree on that.
Yep.
I think it's the Christ on the cross, it's a metaphor for God dying for your sin. I think it's a beautiful metaphor.
Okay, that's beautiful. Please look into the evidence of the earliest writers outside of the Gospels who talked about Jesus Christ. Please look into the expansive evidence of what the earliest creeds and church fathers talked about that spread around the entire known world that started within days after his death. If you look at all that evidence and just say, it was all made up, it was all a hoax, it was all a joke, no, they didn't really write that, no, they didn't really die for that belief, no, they were all charlatans, all 1,000 of them, more than that, eyewitnesses and eyewitness testimony, well, fine, land there, discount the historical evidence. But you can't be a genuine truth seeker and say, no, I understand a lot of it's there, but still, I just want to say the cross and him dying on the cross is metaphorical. It never happened.
I'm not saying it never happened.
Okay.
I believe in the metaphor. I believe in the metaphor's meaning. I believe that it all happened, but there is an explanation for everything that happened. Other than that he was the divine Son of God.
Okay, what's that explanation?
Well, I gave you some, like the twin or
all right, but if you're going to be an
honest like when he was a child, he had a clay bird and he turned it into a real bird. It's like that's kind of your
Muhammad,
classic.
actually. But yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But you understand?
Yes.
Those kinds of explanations, I don't have the capacity to give you every single one of them, but I think that there's
just need evidence, though.
There's a possibility that it exists.
Yes.
And there's a possibility that he was the Son of God.
Yes.
But instead of arguing about which one of those were true, you know, we can both look at each other and acknowledge that we both believe in the way that he taught.
Okay, but what did he teach? Did he die? did he rise from the dead. I'm sorry, you and I cannot just look at each other and say, it's cool, man. Whatever you think about it, whatever your interpretation is, let's just roll with that. No, you respect what I'm saying right now. You're listening closely and believe that I am speaking about something that I truly believe in that comports to reality. That is truth. That which comports closest to reality. All right, you're respecting me. You're not saying, oh, he's just speaking in metaphor right now.
No.
Stuart's, he's just out here just dancing around all different types of ideas. No, you're taking what I'm saying seriously. Well, we have to take what Jesus Christ said seriously. We can't just look at the Gospels and say, oh, it's all metaphor and he's just talking and blabbing about how he's the Son of God, but he didn't really mean it. No, in order to take Christ seriously or anybody seriously, you better look at the words. You better read in context. You better see what other people said about him. And then you better decide, all right, am I actually going to worship this man who claimed to be God? Or am I just going to say, no, it didn't happen based off of the evidence that I've found? But I have not heard any evidence from you about the alternatives. And so I think there's something emotional here going on. Usually, if somebody just makes up these different ideas without any evidence behind them, it's usually not really an intellectual thing. It's more of an emotional bias in order to get out from underneath the tough, challenging claims that Christ makes.
2,000 years ago, it can be convoluted. It can be lied through.
Absolutely.
Like there's nothing today, there's nothing in this moment right now that could prove that as a possibility.
Yeah, what can you prove in this life other than a few mathematical experiments, maybe? Next to nothing. You can't prove why you go to school here. You can't prove why in the world you're wearing a hat right now when it's so hot out. I mean, I do the same kind of thing. I wear a beanie all the time. But you can't prove these things to me. And so why are you holding Jesus Christ to a level of trying to prove himself that you don't hold yourself to, or any of us to?
I'm holding the people who claim that it happened to that proof stand. And you know, you're right to do it with me too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there could be proof, and it's sad that I can't bring that to you. You know, maybe in the future I'll have that, but you gotta have more than just he said it, so I believe it.
That's not what I have at all. I would never consider myself an honest truth seeker if I just said, oh, the Bible tells me so. That's why I believe it. That's why I brought out, I mean, if you want to go to the evidence of the reliability of the Gospels, I've got way more there. And many people have way more there. So it's the evidence for these different historical sources, the evidence for him as a historical character, the evidence of his claims, and now the evidence internally and externally of the Bible of whether this resurrection really occurred or not. So you keep saying I need more evidence, but you're not telling me what that evidence is. My concern for you, again, that's why I said the words emotional bias.
He couldn't have given a false prophecy, right? Do you agree with that?
He could not. Sure, yeah.
So there is suggestively from the Bible that Jesus believed that, or he told, there's a verse, I wish I could remember which verse it was, but he's telling the apostles, God's kingdom will enter this earth for your death. And it's been over 2,000 years.
Good. The Gospel of Mark in 70 AD. And so, yes, many of those people standing there would be there when the temple was destroyed. And so he was not talking about heaven, some eternal existence. No, that was in the way future. He was talking about literally here and now. Some of you will be standing here and see it occur historically.
You're going to be here tomorrow.
I'll be here tomorrow. Bring out your theories.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Nice to meet you.
Absolutely. Good to meet you. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this episode. Hit that subscribe button. We'd love for you to join the family. Also, want to invite you to our church in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's New Canaan High School, and it meets Sundays at 9:30 a.m.